Who is Fergie Chambers? It's a very difficult question to define oneself in a statement. I am a father, I'm an athlete, I'm a Muslim, I am a guy who lives in Tunisia, and I am to some extent a businessman, although I don't consider myself a businessman in the traditional sense, because I don't do business for the sake of business. I do business for the sake of passion. I'm American by virtue of birth, although I think that there are only about 1 million people who really deserve to be called American, and they live in reservations. The first time I was interested in the idea actually was the first time that I read Malcolm X's autobiography when I was a child. 9, 10, 11 years old. And then for almost 20 years I've worked with Palestinian groups in the US. As an activist, as a funder, because it was a Muslim country that was maybe a little more accessible than somewhere in the Gulf, for instance, or somewhere farther east, because I speak French, and because I have a very good friend from childhood who's lived here for 12 years. And because my wife's family, a lot of them live in Sicily. So it was, and we'd spent some time there. So there were kind of a lot of reasons.
So you have links with Tunisia.
And I love the Mediterranean. Anywhere on the sea is good. Whether you're in Spain or Italy or Greece, it's always nice on the sea here.
Yes, you say that you love the Mediterranean because you spent your childhood visiting France.
Yeah, my grandmother was in Provence, and I would be there every summer, and then often other vacations in the wintertime when we would have school vacation. So this is where I really developed an interest in football as a fan. I also loved all the American sports growing up. I still do when I can stay up late enough to watch them. But I was introduced to Olympique de Marseille, but also when I was a teenager is when like the '98 World Cup was going on, and I was in France for that, the 2006 World Cup. And everybody in the village where my grandmother lived, everybody who worked around her house, all they cared about was football. People are chilled out. I think the food is delicious. I think people are really welcoming here. Man, I like so much of it. It's hard to say.
Top 3, let's say.
Top three. Mlochia. Like a good German rice, and I probably just slat the mashoya, like I can eat that every night. I can just dip bread in that every night and I'm happy. And bread, bro, like the Tunisian bread is like out of control good. So I hop around, I try to watch, I love sports. I watch college football, American college football on Saturdays here in the evening sometimes. I watch golf at night. I watch American pro football on Sundays. In about a week, the baseball playoffs will start, so I'll stay up till midnight if the Mets make it.
The NBA matches, no? Basketball?
Yeah, of course. I'm a Celtics fan, so we're very happy this year. Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah. My grandfather started going he had season tickets at Boston Garden since the 1950s. So he was watching every great team from Bill Russell and Bob Cousy to Larry Bird in the 80s, and so I was staying up until what? Well, about Fajr time was like the end of the finals games, like whatever, 3, 4 in the morning in June. So it's okay. I just had to get up and watch. What I can say is that there were 2 different contracts. There was an initial contract to relieve the debts that existed that were going to prevent the team from competing. And that reserved the rights for a primary sponsorship for the first year. Basically for like a company to be determined as we put the project together. Then there was a second contract that is a 4-year partnership. I'm not going to say the amount, I'm not going to say exactly how it works, because again, that's also up to the club to do that together with me. We will have a press conference, inshallah, in some capacity where I can define these things better. But that was a 4-year contract, and so the money that's going into the club is included in that contract. So it's not just like someone calls me up and is like, oh hey, we want to buy this guy, can we buy him? Like, yeah, here you go. Like, you know, it's structured, it's organized, you know. But it went beyond. Again, the initial agreement was we want to get the team out of debt. But then, okay, you get a team out of debt, and then if the team can't compete, if you can't get a good product on the field, no, we wanted to see a successful team. We want to, as I said, like if the idea is to restore pride in millions of fans of Club Africain, then that means building out a good youth system. That means creating a good structure of governance around the club, and it means putting a good team on the field. So you know, the first thing we did after I got involved, after we agreed on the initial terms, was sign David Batoni. It was, I think the first 2 signings was Batoni and Khadraoui, actually. And then
the player or not?
What's that?
You like the player Khadraoui or not?
I do a lot. I like how he plays. I don't know. Directly investing, no. Could I be involved in the world of sports business in a way that I could you know, do business with other clubs? Sure, but I don't. Like, this is the team I support, and this. So if I was going to have this kind of direct relationship, that's with Club Africain. We talked about the possibility of helping build fields in High Hallel. We talked about the different cities around Tunisia that could use like youth athletic centers, you know, fields and swimming pools and courts, you know. So it was initial conversations, and I hope that I mean, I don't know the new minister yet. I hope we will get to know them and identify, you know, what kinds of things we can be helpful with. I think it is. I think it's the most popular brand in Tunisia. I think it's the most popular association in Tunisia.
So what do you think about Club Africain supporters?
I think they're wonderful. As I said in the beginning, I think they're super passionate, a little obsessed, and that's the way it should be with sports, right? I mean, that's why we do this stuff. I find them to be incredibly passionate, super welcoming, and of course, it gets a little crazy sometimes. Because that's
positive way, or?
In a positive way, mostly, and it can be negative, you know. Anything, when there's passion involved, passion goes in every direction. I think it's overwhelmingly positive. If a player is not performing well, of course the team has to make decisions about what to do with that player. But I'm never interested in insulting that player. I'm never interested in hating that player. Sometimes that can get over the top, but that's not unique to clubbists. That can happen with any supporter of any team, and that comes from passion. That one's in my head all the time. So I have an American friend who's lived here for a long time, and when I came here, I was here for about maybe 3 weeks. 4 weeks alone, and so the first night I went and had dinner with my friend, and I met his Tunisian friends, and they were all clubbists, and there had just been a match. I don't know if it was that day or that week there had been a match, and maybe you remember that. Of course, the ultras always put these really great banners up, but it was the week they had done a banner. That said, it was about like war crimes sculpt hearts forging resistance. And I was just like, I was blown away by the artwork, by the energy of that. I was like, this is really cool, I have to go see that. So I went, and you know, they described to me too a little bit of the history that there had been a club that the French allowed to exist, and then there had been a club that was kind of more secretly started in resistance to the French. and this was Club Africain. So of course I was like, God, this is great. That's my club, and I liked the colors, everything. It looked good. So I said, I want to go see this, and I went. And the first match I went to was a bad match, but even just remembering seeing like the little kids and how into it they were, and and dancing around and cheering, like the way I did when I was like 9 years old watching a baseball game in New York. Like this is my entire life. It's the only thing that matters. And I think there was an American friend who comes a lot. He works for me. We've been friends for 20 years now, but he helps me with my affairs in the States, and then he comes here, and he also really loves sports. He really loves football. So when we watched that match, I was like, man, it would be cool. It'd be cool to get involved with this team, but we probably can't do that. It's a big club, it's complicated. But we'll do something with sports in Tunisia. Somebody from the club contacted him and said, look, we heard that your American friend is interested in the business of sports in Tunisia, and we heard he's clubist. Maybe he wants to talk about the problems that the club has. So we found out that they had a lot of debt, and that there was a risk of not being able to compete this year, which would be a catastrophe for the club, for sport, who knows? It could have created political problems in the country if the club wasn't playing. Instability. I was immediately interested, and it was, again, it wasn't about business. It was about, okay, is this an opportunity to help some really good people? And I don't mean the staff or the committees around the club, and there are good people with them, but I'm not thinking about that. I'm thinking about the people in Tunisia, the supporters, the clubbists, the millions and millions of people who live for that club. I had an opportunity to make things better for those people by helping the club get out of this situation. So initially, this was the agreement. We're going to take care of these debts that could prevent the team from competing this year.
The first contact with Club Africain side was with the president of the Club Africain.
With Heiko. Oh, well, no, Hamouda Ben Ammar. That wasn't about official contact. Sorry. That wasn't about official contact with the club. Hamouda, when I moved here, I was renting a place in Sidi Bou Said, and I would go to a cafe every morning, and I actually got to know his wife and his daughter pretty well, and so then I met him, and I was already interested in the club. So of course he told me a lot more about the club, about his time with the club. We watched Tunisia play in the African Cup together. So I was even more exposed. And I should have mentioned this. Even when I went to the first match, he gave me tickets. So he was a big part of that. Just me getting to know the club, but he wasn't a part of the negotiation because we were friends. We were, I had iftar at their house a number of times. My wife and their daughter spend time together with their kids. I don't think he was going to come in and be like, oh, can you help give us money for debts for the team? It would have been strange. I think he wanted to keep our relationship as a social relationship. Friendship one. Almost like family, and so it was Heiko that I met with first. Look, we are going to very soon, inshallah, do an announcement that very specifically names what is the sponsorship. Even I'm starting a company here, so we will have an actual sponsor.
Which is Cox or another?
No, Cox is my family's company in Atlanta. I have nothing to do with Cox. I was born with a share of ownership, like everyone in my family, and I sold it to my family. which is why I have tons of money.
So now you have no relationship with Cox?
None. Okay. None. So, and that's where this all started with, because it was being reported, oh, Cox is the new sponsor, and I was like, no. So no, I'm starting some businesses here. It's all to do with sport, and so we'll announce that, and we'll announce the nature of the sponsorship, and and what kind of contract we signed and for what. Look, initially, I just wanted to help the club, and I didn't have anything to sponsor it with. I want to help, and I know I'm interested in doing business in sport here. At the time I was already getting ready to open a gym in La Marsa, mostly focused on like combat sports. This was my business I was setting up here. I've run some gyms before in the US. But it was, you don't have one gym sponsor an entire football team, so in that instance, I was like, well, I know I'm going to do more business here. I'm sure it'll have to do with sports. So we can basically create a partnership and have the rights to sponsorship. And as I create a project, it's going to make sense. We'll make it work.
Okay. Some are saying that you're going to purchase the rights of the digital, الافريقي replay, SEA brand. So how true is that? That's
not correct. I don't even understand whether I would have the right to purchase those rights, because I know that if it's a brand that's directly controlled by the club, then it only belongs to the club and it can't belong to an individual outside of the club. As I said, I'm starting my own projects, and that's what we're focused on, is that I have my own projects which are distinct from the club, and my hope is that if we have success in those projects, that I can continue to help support the club in the years to come with that.